Texas Tribune has released the results of an investigation into the absolutely horrendous response to the Uvalde mass shooting. And they specifically focused on why did it take so long for the police to make a move? Why did they wait for that SWAT team, which was 60 miles away, to arrive before they moved in? And what they have found is not surprising, but they found a lot of evidence for it. They were terrified of the gun. The guy had an AR-15 and they didn't want to go up against it. It's what we suspected, but they could not be clearer that that was what it was. Sergeant Daniel Coronado of the Uvalde Police Department is on recording from the actual incident saying, "I have a male subject with an AR." Another officer says, "F," just out loud, is shocked and horrified at the prospect of going up against this gun. Another just says AR. Like that's the code. We do not want to go up against an AR. Donald Page goes on to say, "There was no way of going in. We had no choice but to wait and try to get something that had better coverage where we could actually stand up to him." So bear in mind, some of this is coming from body cam footage and analysis of that. Some is coming from investigations and interviews that came right after the shooting. Some of it is a little bit more delayed. All of these police officers were apparently reached out to by the Texas Tribune and none agreed to participate in their investigation. But we want to give you some more of the results of it. Detective Luis Landry says, "We weren't equipped to make entry to that room without several casualties. Once we found out it was a rifle he was using, it was a different game plan we would have to come up with. It wasn't just going in guns blazing the Old West style and take him out." Chief Arredondo, you remember him, he says, "We're gonna get scrutinized for why we didn't go in there. I know the firepower he had based on what shells I saw, the holes in the wall in the room next to his. The preservation of life, everything around the gunman was a priority." Well, the preservation of some people's lives, the preservation of the lives that could be lost trying to rush this guy with a weapon of war, not necessarily the preservation of the lives around him in that room that were at risk if you didn't go in. And by the way, all of this, the point of this coverage, why I want to cover it, is they were clearly terrified. And I'm not doing this coverage to say, "Oh, look at them, look at these cowards." I think they should be terrified. I would be terrified. I have enough empathy that I can just make myself terrified thinking about what they were going up against. The point is that they were terrified. An entire group of police officers, some of whom, by the way, had ARs of their own, were so terrified at the prospect of going up against someone with this weapon that they couldn't imagine doing so until they had the SWAT team, which had better armor, because apparently this AR would just shred their body armor, better shields and those sorts of things. And that is the entire point. If you can routinely go out and just buy a weapon that will incapacitate, paralyze a police department, I don't know, maybe we ban that gun. Maybe you should not be able to spend $1,200 and nullify all of the law enforcement in a small town. But that is not the lesson that was learned from Uvalde. The cops, by the way, who are terrified of being shot with this gun, are not a part of the solution of trying to get those guns off the street. That's its own issue. And I'm not saying that no cops are on our side on that, but that's incredibly frustrating. And so, Yaz, I want your thoughts about this. It is so frustrating that this is such a clear example of why these guns cannot be available for civilian use. And yet we're months and months and months out of this and nobody seems to have learned that lesson.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to say, I do like the Texas Tribune as a publication. They get hit by a lot of people on the right for being maybe too leftist or too left-leaning. But honestly, I think they actually do a decent job of covering stories accurately and with journalistic integrity. I'm not like sponsored by the Texas Tribune. Do I need to say that? But it just so happens that a lot of the facts and realities that they report on just aren't flattering to Texas Republicans and the people who tend to align with those beliefs. So when I first read this story, I think I read it sometime yesterday, I wanted to just roll my eyes and say, "Oh, that's typical." But I didn't really want to think about it much more beyond that, because who wants to think about the fact that these grown men in their chosen profession decided to let children face the weapon that they themselves were too cowardly to face, even though the children didn't have the additional body armor on that they had. And even though the children obviously didn't have weapons to protect themselves. And you know what's ironic about it is every single cop that I've ever spoken to personally about their job loves to tell me how dangerous it is for them. And I'm not trying to deny that, right? Obviously, it's a very dangerous profession. But if they're so utterly aware of how dangerous it is, and again, no one's making them be cops, right? They can choose another profession that's less dangerous if it's too much for them. but they knew what this job entailed when they took it, right? They knew the risks that they were taking. And every cop that I've ever spoken to who is so quick to talk about the dangers of the job also says that they do it because they want to serve and protect their communities. And I'm just not seeing that here. The children did not choose this life. They were just going to school. They were counting on these grown, armed, and armored men to defend them. And those men just chose not to do their jobs.
Yeah, and again, we can disagree on interpretations. Like I said, I'm not trying to get on the cops for being scared. I'm getting on our entire society for not learning anything from that fear. And by the way, I'm not saying that I never get on cops for being scared. The fact that they're perpetually afraid that literally anyone they pull over could shoot them leads to a lot of needless death. I'm saying in this particular case where there's already been a mass shooting, I understand it. It's up to the politicians, it's up to our populace to change the law so that we don't end up with more of these situations. Also, fact check, I'd referenced spending $1,200 to nullify an entire police force. I was wrong about that. I'm being told you can get them now for $400. Ridiculous. You should not be able to buy a weapon that nullifies an entire police force for less than an Xbox. And don't fact check me about how much an Xbox costs. I assume it's like $400, I don't care. An Xbox and a Switch, fine. In any event, here's the issue. Coming out of that shooting, the talk was not, oh my God, look what one can do with an AR. It was mental health this, but do nothing about it. It was, a lost generation that, but do nothing about it. You had people like, I'm just gonna summarize with Senator Bob Hall, state senator, a Republican, who said, this man had enough time to do it with his hands or a baseball bat. And so it's not the gun, it's the person. Except that it was the gun. You didn't hear the cops routinely being recorded as saying, oh my God, he's got a bat. A bat? A bat? We're not going in there against a bat. No, it was the AR. But think about this. This person said he had enough time to do it with his hands. He thought a person is gonna go into a school and with their bare hands kill dozens of people. This is the insanity that we're up against, trying to save people's lives. And I'm also just gonna briefly mention that a judge has now blocked a law regulating which sorts of handguns can be sold in California. We'll see, it's gonna be appealed and all that. But this could have cascading effects that stop a lot of regulations on handguns. This is Cormac Carney, US District Court judge. He said it's unconstitutional, cannot be enforced. What does the law do? It requires that any new handgun has to have 3 components. A chamber load indicator, which shows whether the gun is loaded, seems like just a very reasonable thing to have to stop people from accidentally being killed. A magazine disconnect mechanism that will stop the gun from firing if the magazine is not properly inserted. And micro stamping capability so law enforcement can more easily link spent shell casings to the guns they were fired from. All either routine safety mechanisms or the ability to look into and investigate crimes. Nope, can't do it because no handgun, according to the judge, available in the world has all 3 of these features. These regulations are having a devastating impact on Californians' ability to acquire and use new state-of-the-art handguns. Well, hypothetically state-of-the-art. I mean, we could speculate that state-of-the-art could be handguns that are manufactured to stop people from needlessly being killed by them. But apparently, and this has been going on for years, apparently no gun manufacturer has been willing to make a gun that has these safety features. You can make guns incredibly safe if you want to. You can make guns almost impossible for a random person to steal and then kill someone with. But they're choosing not to, knowing that a judge is gonna have their back. And that's what we're seeing in this case. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.